You're tuning in to the Black Hollywood Live Network, featuring news, interviews, and commentary on all things Black Hollywood. Hollywood redefined. From Los Angeles, California, presented by Maria Menounos and streaming live thanks to Akamai Technologies. This is Black Hollywood Live Conversations, featuring in-depth interviews with actors, writers, producers, and directors. Black Hollywood Live, Hollywood redefined.
You're listening to Black Hollywood Live.
And now, the host of Black Hollywood Live, Conversations.
Hey guys, welcome to Black Hollywood Live's Conversations. I am joined with Grammy Award-winning music legend Kirk Whalum.
And Whalum.
We're saying both names here. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, man, and thanks for calling me a legend, man. I tear up when I hear that word.
No, but honestly, like when you look at your body of work, and first of all, I have to say, over 20 albums. Like you're the hardest man working in this industry. But no, as I was kind of telling you before, when you know I was told that you were coming in, I had done some research on you. I was like, me and my dad used to have choreography to the Whitney Houston saxophone breakdown. Like we would be in the car with each other, and this is really dangerous actually, but we'd have our little car choreography.
Yeah, who's driving, you know?
Well, yeah, we won't talk about that.
Well, the gospel according to jazz, I'm sorry. So Whitney Houston, 7 years working, traveling, and one little stop on the road was to do this this film soundtrack, a song, where she basically decided, she insisted that she had to sing this song live to the film. And, the directors were like, man, we're not going to do that. But, oh, that's a great idea, Whitney. Yeah, that's an excellent idea. And so they they finally said, you know what, I don't think we can do that. And she said, well, I don't think I can sing it. And so finally she says, I tell you what, go ahead and do it like you want to do it, with the lip syncing and all that. She said, promise you got to have somebody to sing it because I'm not going. If I sing it, I'm going to sing it live. Number one, to the film, and number two, my band is going to be playing as I sing. So imagine here, logistics in movie land don't work like that,
right?
And so, but by the way, now they do a lot of that. But she was one of the first, and the fact that I can say that the saxophone solo I played on that record, which by the way, I'm a jazz musician, I'm over here doing my thing, making Kirk Whalum records, and I get this call to tour with her, and didn't know it was going to be 7 years, to do that song. Now, the saxophone solo I played off the cuff has been heard by more people than any other recorded saxophone solo to this day.
Wow!
So that's a pretty incredible,
legendary.
I guess legendary. I don't know about that, but it was absolutely not. It was serendipitous, but not sort of random. It was her saying, "I want my band." And by the way, again, with the project called The Gospel According to Jazz, obviously I'm serious about my vertical connection with the Creator, and I believe that really her intentionality of doing that was not just because we play with her, but because we pray with her, we pray for her. That was our whole thing, is that we were sort of her support system, her extended family. And she knew she was safe when we were around because we were praying for her. And that's huge for any artist, but for someone like her, in French we say une vedette, like somebody who's like not just a artist. This is an icon. That it puts you in a category that is extremely difficult to sort of be a real person and have a real life. And so with that being the case, you need prayer. You need somebody undergirding your every move, and that's what we were for her.
And kind of to piggyback off that, you just released this new DVD, The Gospel According to Jazz, Chapter 4.
Yes.
And as we get into that, I want to rewind a little bit to just kind of get into your head. You're from Memphis, Tennessee.
Yes.
You grew up, your family was very much into jazz. One thing that I'd read is that you said music is the highest form of communication.
Yeah.
Tell me about what it was like for you growing up with the jazz family. Obviously, it was in your blood. Did you always know this is what you were going to do? This was going to be you know, you're the life prodigy.
Sure. Well, I'll say that, you know, when you play as an artist, when you do art on this level in terms of, you know, like international travel and that kind of thing, it's a calling, really. You know, sometimes it takes you a while to get to it, but when you do, you know that's what you were called to do. Mm-hmm. And so if you're smart, you'll get about the business of preparing for that. So you go to school, you study and all of that. For me, it was definitely that I knew right away as a kid that I wanted to play music, and there was no question, oh, maybe I should do this or I could do that. It was already sealed. And my family wasn't so much a jazz family as a musical family. Okay. And growing up in Memphis, we call Soulsville, USA, soul music. I mean, the blues and soul music, you know, that was what I cut my teeth on.
Talk to me about Memphis R&B.
Yeah, so the difference is that, let's say, for instance, we talk about soul music, people think immediately Motown. Absolutely, you know, R&B, soul music, but you gotta go back a little bit further, you know, in the root system, yep. And you get to a place called Memphis, and that's really kind of ground zero. You go further, you're in Mississippi Delta. You go further, you're in slavery, right? So Memphis is that place. It was the New York of the South, right. And so that's where all the blues artists were trying to get, and then ultimately it kind of morphed a little bit into rhythm and blues, and then you got this guy who comes along in Memphis, you know, singing this music. You're like, who is this guy? And you're like, really? I mean, the idea that one person could almost change the whole direction of music. Otis Redding. Otis Redding was there to bring somebody else. He was sort of chauffeuring another band to, you know, that they could audition at Stax Records in Memphis, STAX. You can look at the Stax Museum of American Soul Music online and see about this. But Otis Redding changed the whole game. And so now all the European rock bands and everybody is trying to cop what Otis Redding was doing in Memphis. So that's just one vignette about the impact of Stax music in particular and soul music in Memphis in general has had on, you know, world culture, world music.
Okay, so I'm going to sound so ignorant right now. I never realized there were so many different types of saxophonists. What do we have? Soprano.
So it's like a choir. Like if you ever sing in a choir, you know there are sopranos that sing the high notes.
My mom's gonna kill me for like bringing this up.
That's all right. So review is good. Altos sing the not so high notes. Yep. Mostly, you know, ladies are sopranos and altos. Then you got the tenors, mostly men. The tenors, you know, Pavarotti, right? Yep. Then you got the baritones and the basses. Well, soprano, alto, tenor, baritone, bass. Each one of those represents a saxophone, right? The soprano is the one that John Coltrane sort of made popular. Sidney Bechet years ago, almost 100 years ago. And then alto, people like David Sanborn, Hank Crawford, Cannonball Adderley. Tenor, mostly John Coltrane, Michael Brecker. I play tenor primarily and soprano. Baritone is the big guy, you know, and, you know, it's a little inconvenient to carry around. Bass, pretty much you don't see much anymore. A few people still make them, but it's just rudely huge. It's just no way to, you got to drag it around. You could ride it to the gig, basically.
And also the flute.
I play flute as well. And that is more, you know, the fact that the Woodwind family, you know, kind of started with the flute, which is now not wood, but it was made out of wood, just like you see a recorder. Yep. That was the original flute. And, you know, then eventually the French made what they call the flûte transversaire, which is, you know, sideways, and it's made out of metal. And that's the one I play. That's, you know, that's geeky music stuff. I love talking about it.
It's interesting to me. Because growing up, I always wondered, why do they make us play the recorder? Why do we have to play the recorder?
It's a great entree into the world of, you know, blowing something to make a pretty sound, you know. And the fact that you close one hole, and then you close two, and the sound goes lower, and three, lower. And that's a very good sort of physics exercise for non-musicians. You know?
So to move from physics, I want to talk a little bit about spirituality.
Yes.
So for you, growing up in Memphis, was spirituality something that was heavy in your family?
Absolutely.
And where did the music...
And you could really say that my family was equal parts, music and ministry. Lots of preachers and gospel singers, orators. My grandfather was a great orator in the faith, And so I saw, I'm a PK, a preacher's kid, so I'm being raised in a family where I'm listening to my dad preach sermons every Sunday, and so it didn't take long for me to figure I want to do that too, and that's sort of a dynamic, right? Father, son, and sometimes father, daughter, etc. But I have always seen myself doing that. It took me a long time to kind of reckon with that. Because it wasn't kind of popular, around your kids. What are you going to do? I'm going to be a fireman. I'm going to preach. It's like, yeah. And also you had a lot of people trying to tell you, hey, I know you're going to be a preacher like your dad. So what you do, you're like, I'm going to do anything but that just because you think that's what I'm going to do. But ultimately, around 1991, I accepted that calling to the ministry. But it's like a ministry that is wrapped in a enigma and wrapped in a saxophone case. For me, my ministry is through my music, and it's about communicating, using music as a language and connecting people, right, horizontally with the vertical. That here's God, who I believe created all of us, again, ways that we can't really understand. It evolved and it all that did this, scientifically we know that, but I truly believe that there was somebody intelligent and in charge of that. What would Jesus do? And so for me, I share my faith, my belief through my music. And so, it's all, people say, well, do you pastor a church? No. And yes, it's like my church is the world, I go out and the world is my pulpit.
The congregation is the world.
Exactly. Yeah, and I'm not, hitting anybody over the head. I'm just presenting this, we're sort of visualizing the invisible. Like I play and I'm trusting God to manifest in this sound that will hit a person's heart, and they go, wow, okay, I think I feel that. Yeah, I definitely feel that. Don't know what to do with it. And so that's kind of where we come from, where Jesus is behind all of this, because of the fact that, his desire to do something creative, anything to grab a person's attention and say, you know what, I don't care what your faith is, you're Muslim, you're Jewish, whatever, that this Jewish man, one person in history, did something that no one else did, and that is to bridge the gap between humans and that creation and creator, and dealing with the whole issue of sin and rebellion. All of that was taken care of by this Jesus, and so I'm just so grateful for that. That it's my pleasure and privilege to share it.
Wow. So the Gospel According to Jazz, Volume 1 is kind of your first.
We say chapters because it's sort of like the Gospel According to John, chapter 5. So the Gospel According to Jazz, chapter 1, 2, 3, and then now 4.
So starting with the first one, that was kind of your birth for what we'll call your church?
Yeah, I guess you could say that. Really, it came out of a big disappointment, really. I was recording. Again, I'm a mainstream some people say secular recording artist. I play jazz and R&B, and we dance and have fun. And that's, to this day, that's what is kind of my job. And I love it, and my vocation. But one day I was, dropped unceremoniously from Columbia Records and of your old home of New York. And, that day was a devastating day for me. And, it's one thing to over-spiritualize it and say, well, God had another plan. No, I was really just pull up, And at that moment, man, it's like my wife, who is my girlfriend, I met her when I was 15. And so by now we've been married for like 10 years. And she says to me, okay, what can you do today? It's like she's like this. What can you do today that you couldn't do yesterday when you were a Columbia recording artist? I'm like, dang.
What a girlfriend that is.
Wow. I'm like, and sure enough, it started me thinking creatively as opposed to, succumbing to this existential, disaster. And sure enough, I said, wow, I would do this series that sort of brings together all the areas of my life, the artistic, the creative, the jazz, the ministry, all of that. it would be called, the Gospel Quartet Jazz, a name that my manager came up with, Earl Cole. And at that time, I had been touring with George Duke, the great George Duke, who's now passed away, who played with Frank Zappa, who is, basically iconic when it comes to playing the keyboard. And, he and Jonathan Butler and a lot of great artists, they weren't really venturing into this area because it was sort of sacred, secular. You sort of had to pick one, either your mainstream or your gospel. And I'm like, why can't we do both, basically?
I love it.
And they dug the idea because we had sort of been messing around with it in different shows. And in the middle of this show, just after playing, da-dum, ba-doom, boom, boom, reach for it, boom, 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 right? We get through playing that and we go into Precious Lord, Take My Hand. And we got the standing ovation on that song.
Wow.
Okay, and so which says that, people out there really do want to hear what matters to you. They may or may not agree with it, but boy, it can touch them and maybe provide an opening for them to make that move as well.
For you, a little question would be, growing up religious, because I tend to go through this problem with myself, and then also being in entertainment.
Yeah.
Sometimes there are things where, you have to question, well, is that the right thing for me to do? Is this the right calling in this field? And how do you kind of how did you kind of balance because especially, from what I hear about the stories of the jazz clubs, you know what I mean? They weren't really looked at as, the most
wholesome.
Place. So how did you kind of find that inner balance within yourself?
Well, that scenario that you present there is one that every single person of faith, okay, and again, I would say the Christian faith, as a person sitting here as a Muslim would say, yeah, I deal with that same thing, It should be something that we all do. And I think that the average person of faith does deal with that, no matter what job you're in. Okay, I happen to be in the entertainment industry, which has these overt evidences of, what, people shouldn't be doing and that shouldn't be thinking and all of that, right? We sort of portray that as our business, whether it's in, visual arts or, in TV or whatever, theater. Especially in music, people associate music with particular behavior, like, okay, this music here, I think of this behavior. But some of that is in people's heads. But at the same time, there is a very real kind of soul searching that one has to do to say, hey, what is the possibility of me being who I am and whose I am in a scenario where people are making assumptions about me that may or may not be true, and to represent someone, as a calling in a context of mainstream pop culture, to represent someone who's calling them to live higher, to live a more just life, to live a more peaceful life, to live a more purposeful life. I mean, to me, that is red meat for, sorry, maybe if you're a vegetarian, that's green vegetables for, for somebody who is out here as we are in mainstream culture. And yet you are a person of faith. Man, I mean, it can be done. People do it every day. I mean, and I'm very much inspired by other people in the entertainment industry who love God and who pursue God, and every day in their daily lives, their daily walks, they wake up saying, okay, let me just first of all get down on my face and set the record straight, and then, let me just sort of fill my head and my heart with something that may draw me closer to God or may lift me up or cause me to think, godly thoughts, or try to position my life in a way that God would be pleased and God could say, okay, now I want you to go here. Because you can't really hear instructions if you're not tuned in. Mm-hmm. It's like, we got to be tuned in here to hear what it is we're saying. So if you tune in early in the morning, then you have a better chance of hearing maybe some marching orders, or maybe, you should call so-and-so, or, have you thought about stopping this particular thing, or have you thought about maybe this relationship isn't good, like all those things can come to one, and then you have this whole day to live it out, and to be in relationship with other people. It's not about, okay, let me get this book open and who can I judge today for doing this or doing that. It's like that's completely antithetical to what Jesus, like what would Jesus do? Not that, right? What Jesus was about, how can I form a bond with you? Let me tell you this story, this parable. Oh, wow, man, this is a cool dude. And then you go, wait a minute, you are the Son of God, and you're sitting here just hanging out with me. That's what the prostitute said. She said, really? She couldn't believe he was talking to her. You know, like a man talking to a woman, even at just that, let alone, you know, I make my living, you know, in sex, you know. And Jesus is like, I love you. So sue me, right? So it's pretty heavy stuff, but I think that's the door that is open for us when we're willing to think creatively and non-linear. You know, the sort of linear thinking of sort of fundamentalists, and you know, that can get us just all tied up in knots, man.
And I feel like in the 90s there was kind of a rise of mixing pop music with gospel music, and it kind of becoming more mainstream. Feel like the early 2000s it started to sizzle out as to where hip hop started kind of making a bigger sound. And then I feel like now we're starting to get a second kind of wave of it. As far as your view of music today, do you see it kind of moving back in this direction and coming back to the sound of instruments? Because I feel like we've gotten so far away from anyone actually having live bands anymore.
Well, I'll say, you know, maybe you hit on two things. One is sort of, you know, spiritually significant content, right? And the other thing is, you know, like, I'd say acoustic instruments and sort of the real music thing, you know, even it's grunge, at least, you know, like people playing instruments. So, yes, I think that it was inevitable that would happen. And then even on the spiritual side, that, you know, you can only skate around it for so long. You eventually got to kind of deal with the fact that there's more to this thing than, you know, oh, there's an iPhone and I see how this works and I was just getting an app for this. And no, I mean, guess what? We're more than just a mind and a body. You know, we actually do have a soul, and we're spiritual beings. So you can't just not be that. That's who we are. So then you say, well, how can I approach this? And that's the sort of scary part. But I'm grateful that in the Gospels, Jesus said, you know what, you got to come to this like a little kid. He literally said that if you can't receive this as a little child, you're not going to get it. Right. So yes, it's the deepest of the deep, right? It's profoundly profound, right? But at the same time, it's a flower. You pick up that flower and like, that's freaking awesome. And Jesus is like, right? And so there you make the connection.
The side note, I was at a club 2 months ago. And Michelle,
you're a sinner, man.
I know, but they played Michelle Williams of Destiny's Child when Jesus said, and I was like, "Are they really playing this right now?"
Yeah,
and everyone was so into it,
man.
And I always had to imagine, because when you play stuff like that, or I download it, and you know, I like to listen to it, and my friends will be like, "What are you listening to?" I'm like, "This goes. This song is everything."
Well,
or Erica Campbell's new, she put it to trap hip hop.
Nice.
So I love that we're starting to seeing, okay, this is what they're listening to. Okay, how can we kind of Trojan horse it?
That's a great way of putting it, and not
get
only
them to listen to that message.
Yeah, and I think, you know, we do really have to be clever, just like in Madison Avenue, they're clever, and just like in Hollywood, clever about, okay, my agenda is this. Now you say, is the agenda a just agenda? Right? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. But either way, you're going to figure a clever way to get it out there, right? Oh, just buy this, just get this free app. But really what we're going to do. So, I mean, yeah, if at the end of the day, you got something that you know is wonderful, someone who's wonderful, that you don't feel bad about, like, well, let's see how we can kind of get this out. And that's why instrumental music, jazz in particular, is so cool, because I can play something. I wish I had my horn here. I can play something, and there would be an immediate connection with whoever is out there, because they're not fighting me off because of this label or this other thing. No, all of a sudden now we have a connection. And that connection is altruistic. And it absolutely came from the creator, creator. And man, from there, God is able to say, okay, check this out if you think that's cool, you know.
The passion that you have behind, I don't even know how to describe this, the passion that you have behind your sound, I guess we'll say it like that, and the innovation, because here you are, an instrumentalist, and you created a DVD and a CD. I love it because there's two different types of mindsets in today's generation, visuals and audios. I'm an audio person. You know, this is like wake up in the morning, go for my jog, listen, sit in my car, listen. Why was it important for you to kind of make sure that we have these two types of platforms to get them out to people?
Sure. Oh, so the Gospel According to Jazz series is about this snapshot, you know, this one 2-hour concert, and now we've done 4 of them. First one we couldn't afford the videotape, and so they're all, except for that one, available on video. And because there is something unique about hearing it and sort of closing your eyes and kind of allowing that dialogue to take place, that exchange, that divine encounter.
The sound to paint the picture.
Absolutely, you know, and God loves that, you know, I mean, God is the ultimate artist, right? And then for those people who are visual and who want to kind of, it is an interesting, captivating thing to see this music being made, especially knowing that improvisation is about spontaneous composition. Okay, this is, we practice the songs and we got the scaffolding, the framework. Now, the Spirit of God comes in and creates these notes and this thing, and it builds, and it's like, or drum solo, and it's like, wow, you know, when you see it, you like, wow, that dude didn't even know what he was going to play until he played it. And see, to me, that's the miracle that is captured in the Gospel According to Jazz, and in this type of thing where it's a snapshot, and of course, being artists, you know, we want to go back and say, I wish I could fix this and change that. No, you can't do it. It's like, this is what God meant. Like, whatever that blemish or that, you know, mistake, quote unquote, was, it was meant to be there. And then eventually, like, I kind of like that mistake. It's a sort of funny thing that keeps things moving forward, you know.
I love that, you know, you said 1991 was when you had that kind of revelation.
Yes.
I was reading something, when Jay-Z and Kanye West had came out with their double album, Kanye said, we're going to go on tour, he said, because the church is dead. Concerts are the new church.
Okay.
And I sat with that for a little bit, and I was like, you singing Blank in Paris. I don't know if we want to call that, you know, someone who grew up in the church. I was kind of like, what is he saying? But to hear this and to apply that statement to what you're saying and what the sound is actually, the story that the sound is actually telling versus, love Kanye, but versus what he was talking about.
Sure.
It makes so much more sense because we get to a point of some people don't want to be a part of this congregation or that one because of the specific, you know, pastor or the priest or you know,
this
they don't
belief system,
you know?
or that, you know, there's.
But we can all sit next to each other at this concert and hear something divine, spiritual, and even though we may not believe in each other, we may not believe in our beliefs, it comes together and it brings that euphoric moment of togetherness.
It brings an opportunity for a higher community. You know, that's a very beautiful thing. You know, Martin Luther King called it the beloved community. You know, beloved by whom? Well, by God. And there are a lot of people who won't, you know, don't ascribe to that. Oh, it's God, you know. But hey, guess what? You know, that doesn't change what I believe. And you're right. I mean, you know, the emerging church is what some call it. Some theologians call it the emerging church. That, you know, it's a church without walls, and the Bible says that the kingdom is invisible.
Yeah.
Okay, so it bears, you know, has pretty good backup in Scripture. And, you know, I mean, the church is there. That's not going to happen. But I think maybe, you know, if we take him, you know, give him the benefit of the doubt of what he was saying is that it's the church as it was in your grandmother's day may be dead in terms of, everybody who says, okay, I'm a Christian. Well, what church do you belong to? Some people now, I'm a Christian. I don't belong to a church. I think it's a very important thing to get together. There's scripture that says that forsake not the gathering together, because there's something spiritually supernatural that happens when a group of people who love God come together. That could be at a concert. That could be in a club. So again, I do like the idea. I mean, the gospel according to Jazz is about reaching beyond the walls of the church. So chapter 4, we get a chance to do that. But I do know that, people will have, pronouncements that God is dead and the church is dead. And, you know what, man, that's the the grain of sand is saying to, the creator, you're dead. You're funny. Okay. You are really funny.
So to kind of go on to what the Gospel of Jazz chapter 4 goes beyond just the spiritualness of it. I know that you said Curtis Mayfield, President Obama were kind of some of the influences for this. Paul McCartney. Kind of tell me about like President Obama. So that's obviously a political sense. And today, everything that's going on, what exactly did you want to tie the spirituality with politics?
All right, so I would say that the gospel is political.
Very true.
Okay, the gospel is subversive in many, many ways, and that Jesus was a subversive. That he was killed not because, I can't think of a nuttier reason, but I mean the fact is that he was tortured and killed because he came against the religious system of that day. And he's out here talking to prostitutes, and he basically told them that what you're doing is diametrically opposed to what my father intended to be done, right? So he was subversive, and so it was political in the sense that he was always for the marginalized, right? Oh my God, Jesus was a socialist. Well, call it what you want, but common good. Yeah, he was all about that. He was about the person who was being outcast. He was trying to reach that person. That's why he went straight for the poor. He went straight for the prostitute, the one who was cheating people out of their money, called a publican. He went straight for those people. And so, it's fascinating when you look at it from that standpoint. It is political. And people say, well, you can't mix, religion and politics. I'm like, politics is about ethics, okay? Ethics is about religion. It's about what's right. Yeah, morals. What's the right thing to do? That's what they spend their time on the Hill in Washington, D.C. talking about every single day. That's what politics is about. And so, people say, I'm not into politics. Well, you know what? Yeah, you are, because you do have some rights and wrongs in your head and some things that you are frustrated because you see this happening or that happening. That's politics. So, I mean, to say, yes, maybe the way it is with our electoral system, that's a valid argument that is sometimes ridiculous and irrelevant, but it is indeed about it. It's about what would Jesus do? That's called ethics, And
again, to take it, outside of the spirituality, take it outside of the politics, where can we talk about those two things without having to talk about them? Yeah. That everyone gets along is with music. Yeah, and so it ties it together. So now you also have this, you're going to be hosting a gospel cruise.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, that sounds interesting.
Yeah, and it is something that was, sort of outside of my wheelhouse because I'm a jazz musician. I play R&B music and I love Jesus. So, but it just so happens that I grew up listening to gospel, and my dad was a pastor and I was in the choir, and some of my best friends are gospel musicians, like Kirk Franklin, like Yolanda Adams, like Fred Hammond. These are all people. Yes, sir. They're going to be on this cruise. It's called thegospelmusiccruise.com. If you want to find out more information, thegospelmusiccruise.com. It's in March of 2016, a whole week in the Caribbean. There are worse places one could be. And it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to party. There's going to be a dance band. I mean, it's going to be a gas.
All right. And what was the website again?
thegospelmusiccruise.com.
The Gospel Music Cruise. Okay. And then as far as now, so the DVD just came out.
Yes.
Where can everybody check the DVD
So
out?
go to the easiest thing is to go to look for Kirk Whalum. Okay. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, KirkWhalum.com. Just look up my name, KirkWhalum, and you can find out all about the new CD and DVD. It's a double CD, DVD, Blu-ray, all of that. Yeah.
And then before we go, if you could use one word to define your career, what would that word be?
I need about an hour to think that one through, but communication, because really music is the ultimate language. I believe music is the language God speaks. That it's all about communication. It's all about sound. Like even like we didn't even realize it until a few years ago when all of a sudden our iPhones and our whatever, it's all about music, right? And so why wouldn't it make sense?
That's actually really interesting.
Well, you think about it like sound waves, right? I mean, we wouldn't be broadcasting if it weren't for sound waves. So it is absolutely about sound, and it's about music. And I believe that God speaks the language of music. He doesn't speak English. He can, but that's not his native tongue or her native tongue. God is above gender, right? And the communication absolutely is about music. It's something that God does that creates a universe that communicates with our hearts, that makes us know when in a time of fear and devastation that everything is going to be all right. It's a sound, maybe not audible, but it's something that God uses to speak to us. And I believe that jazz is maybe the closest thing to it.
You're going to make me cry. There's even a human alive like you right now. But thank you for stopping by. One last time, what's the website?
Yeah, KirkWhalum.com, or just go to Facebook and type my name, Twitter, any of that.
There you go. And make sure you guys hit us up at BHL Online on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You guys can tweet me at DJ Jesse J. Until next week, same time, same place. Peace.
From producers Maria Menounos, Dario Kristen, Tiana Hobson, Kevin Undergaro, and the entire BHL crew, we would like to thank you for supporting Black Hollywood Live, the first online broadcast network dedicated to African American entertainment. For questions and comments, contact us at info@blackhollywoodlive.com. Like us on Facebook, tweet us, or Instagram us at BHL Online. And I'm your BHL announcer, Scipio. Instagram me at Planet Scipio. Thank you for tuning in.
Hollywood Redefined.
The views expressed here are those of the host only and do not necessarily reflect the views of BHL or its owners or principals.